When you're in touch with your intuition, maybe you don't know where it's going to go, but you'll know this is exactly where I need to be. We're going to speak now about Mars and Jupiter in Gemini through the 12 houses. So I want to share a few preliminary notes. This is happening at 16 degrees, so look where 16 degrees Gemini is in your chart. In my house system, it's not necessarily where the earlier part of Gemini is, so it depends on your house system. Also look to see where 17 degrees Saturn is in Pisces. Check out my recent video where I've discussed Saturn in Pisces through the houses. This is a square. So this Mars-Jupiter is squaring Pisces, so this is all activating this. This is the first of 3 Jupiter-Saturn squares that will happen over the next year or so. So let me speak a little bit to what this is about, because it's not just Mars-Jupiter, it's Mars-Jupiter along with Saturn in Pisces. I mean, that's a part of what makes this transit so profound. And to review, this transit is happening pretty much all of August. It's coalescing along the second week of August, so it's building up towards that, and it's very much active for the remainder of the month as well. So to review Saturn in Pisces, this is about spiritual maturation. This is applying the effort to actually appreciate and respect that our reality right now as it is may not necessarily be where we want it to be or where we hoped it would be. It requires discipline and active ongoing effort to co-create and to cultivate and to strengthen the parameters, the structures, the boundaries of our life with respect to what is of greater meaning and purpose. We're not just going to be saved and given the promotion. The doors aren't going to just open for us. We need to actively apply discernment with what we're choosing to build and cultivate and discipline in our lives long term. That's the essential Saturn in Pisces teaching. Without that active discernment, our attention and thus our habits and what we're disciplining, what we're cultivating and conditioning, Saturn keyword, long term, will just be sort of haphazard, like whatever we flow into. But if we want more meaning, if we want more spiritual value and meaning and purpose, that we're living and growing and building and strengthening this life for something of greater purpose beyond our own making, beyond the empty materialism of this world or the day-to-day that we might be familiar with, that requires conscious application of boundaries. And I always say with this signature, the boundaries that we affirm are essentially ways of creating a structure, kind of devoting time and space and the totality of our human, physical, worldly experience to meaning. Without the conscious discernment of boundaries, we're not designating our life for the holy, for the meaningful, and so anything can just happen. So there's a maturation, a sort of sombering spiritual development that occurs here with Saturn in Pisces. Now we bring that into the first quarter square with Mars and Jupiter coming together. Let's just say Mars and Jupiter relative to Saturn and Pisces. This is speaking to a lot of expansion, new insight, the calling for self-leadership, opportunities and possibilities, intuiting the flow of the Tao, where life is moving, and the clarity of mind to say, I'm called to do this now. I have to act on this. And these are opportunities. There's an expansive flow of energy that's very much alive right now. And it asks us to be clear and open for the journey so that we can see where we're being guided, not to be too rigid or fixed on our beliefs or our logical frameworks of where we think things are going or what we think things mean. That's a very expansive, opportunistic, intuitive kind of energy. So when we bring that in contrast to this square with Saturn in Pisces, there's this larger sense of what we're acting upon right now. One, definitely don't be reckless. I mean, just think about Mars and Saturn in general. Don't just act impulsively, because Saturn comes along and says, nope, boundaries, it's not going to work. You're not a little child anymore. You can't just say and do and act however you want to. Life doesn't work that way. So we might feel all of these opportunities and possibilities and maybe a lot of FOMO, because Jupiter, Mars can be a lot of activity, especially in Gemini. Go here, do this, talk to this person. Here's an event. Here's a possibility. Saturn in Pisces sort of demands or requires and strongly encourages a deeper, thoughtful self-reflection. Why am I doing this? What's my goal? What's my purpose? Otherwise, we're just seeking experiences. We're just sort of bombarding our energy field and our mind with a lot of stimulation. It might be interesting, but is it meaningful? Is it serving a purpose, right? Like I can spend much of my day very easily scrolling social media, maybe learning a lot, maybe feeling very enthusiastic and excited about it. Like we can use that Mars-Jupiter energy in a sense, especially because we're looking at this conjunction, this new phase. It's subjective, it's unformed. And without some kind of framework, without some sort of internal wisdom or discernment, just use it in a very random and undisciplined kind of way. Feeling for a moment that there's a lot going on and life feels very exciting. But see, by itself, Jupiter, Mars isn't sustainable. And this is the essential nature between Jupiter and Saturn. This can be a flash in the pan. A lot of stimuli, a lot of experience without a lot of wisdom or clarity or discernment about where it's going or why we're even doing it. The Saturn says, don't just have an experience. Let this be the opening. Let this be the beginning of something meaningful that's really deeply relevant to who you are and who you want to become and where you want to be going in this lifetime. So there's wisdom also in letting things go. I spoke about the relevance of boundaries with Saturn, but with Mars, Jupiter, there's a lot of wisdom in being able to say no. Otherwise, if we're just in continual go, yes to this, yes to this, yes to this, we're just going to be overloading our system with too much activity. So the things that we say no to are very often because we're really wanting to honor and respect and affirm the needed freedom to give all of our attention and energy to that which we truly want to say yes to. Our no's, with combination with like this wisdom of discernment and boundaries, are a way of sort of in a maturity and a clarity of mind saying, I really am clear about what's most important to me. With that clarity, I don't know what's going to come. I'm not controlling the sort of exciting and expansive and very adventurous flow of energy at this particular moment, but I'm not going to be indiscriminate and just do anything and everything. So that's an important quality here. So Mars joining Jupiter can actually be pretty destructive. It can even feel violent or destructive or chaotic in the sense that something's being lost. Let's really remember that. It's not just this overt expansion. It can really highlight a lot of things crumbling or being lost or being taken away, or that which is not working being really, really emphasized. With Mars, this can actually feel very unsettling, and we might feel to react to it, right? To become more worked up or more frenetic. It's like trying to plan and organize things and kind of control it all and map it out, figure it out mentally, because maybe it's all kind of falling apart. Relative to Saturn and Pisces, there can be a sort of anarchistic quality. It's not really anarchy. It's really life restructuring itself according to a higher purpose and meaning, and it may not fit into our logical framework as of yet. So there's something to appreciate about just allowing things to kind of shake up and break down and resettle as they need to be, and not to get too reactive, to kind of stay more in the place of, where is this leading us? Like, where's the journey taking? I'm on this journey. It's going to be okay. Don't be so quick to conclude something about it or try to control it. So with that in mind, as we look at this Mars, Jupiter through the houses, we're going to hold these two perspectives. One where there is a lot of opportunity to embrace, where we can be further strengthening and defining the clarity of what we're really building long term. And we just have to be a leader of intuitively guiding our own life. So on this pilgrimage of life, we say, I'm open, I'm ready. I know this is meaningful and has purpose, and I'm ready. So we listen to what comes, and we act when we need to act, and we wait and we listen when it's not time to act. And the other dimension is where we should be mindful of precipitous early action, jumping on things, or being overly and too opportunistic or immature in our response to experience. All right, before we jump into today's topic, a few announcements. The second annual Evolutionary Astrology Conference happens this October. The early bird discount is available until the end of this month of July. The coupon code is EARLYBIRD. If you enroll after July, there are other discounts available. If you become a member, which means you are purchasing any of the past series from the past 2 years, these are 9 months worth of classes, you get $50 off of the conference. So you can check it out and learn more in the description below. As always, I'm available for sessions for individuals and couples and long-term soul-to-soul companionship work for those that want to build more of a soul intimacy and work on a long-term basis. I have many classes and class series available, including my self-study training program on my website. Lastly, I very often will write articles in tandem to these videos. So if you want to receive these written teachings, subscribe to that as well. I send them out about 3 times a month or so. Okay, let's jump into Jupiter, Mars, and Gemini through the houses. First house. The first house corresponds to this instinctive new path of individuation. We essentially always need to know our freedom. This is our freedom to make choices. And in this case, this is the freedom to not have too many thoughts in our bag, too many preconceptions and conditions for the path that we're here to take. The nature of this Mars and Jupiter in Gemini in the first house says the playing field is wide open. Like, this is a very exciting time. Jupiter in your first house in general is a very exciting and enthusiastic time period. Mars is accelerating that. Mars says this is a time period to really strengthen the clarity of your own self-leadership. If you want to further your life, if you want to grow, if you want to achieve your dreams, this Mars-Jupiter says act. Follow your intuition. Take risks. Now, the quality of courage is generally emphasized with Mars in general. It's even stronger in the first house. There can be an existential anxiety here, because to act and do something new means I'm not acting and doing that other thing. There's a sense of breaking from the way that I've been moving and going somewhere new. I could always make new choices, but I can't undo any choice that I make. So that courage says, yes, trust yourself. Maybe it's going to be completely different. Maybe it's very new. But this is where the doors are going to open. And there's that need also, in this case, emphasizing to not be overly hasty. Right? This can really emphasize that sort of opportunistic, I don't want to miss out on anything. I got to make sure I'm not committing to anything so that I stay free. If we're overly non-committal or if we're overly opportunistic, we're just going to be burning ourselves up, burning up our energy. It's just like using a lot of fuel, but not necessarily cultivating any kind of meaningful depth of experience. In this case, and the square to Saturn, depending on the house system and the sizes of the houses in your chart, they're not necessarily going to follow a perfect, each house being 30 degrees. So we need to not just be so quick to jump on the next flashy opportunity. Slow down. It's always helpful to remember that our mapping of the terrain is not always objective and complete. We need to allow life experience to give us a little bit more of the picture. And if we just wait for the right timing, the right alignment, that right clarity, we'll learn a lot. It's actually a little story. I was spending the day mostly just by myself and the kids. My kids are 10, 4.5, and 2. And when we're all together, I often try to think about what can I do that kind of engages all of them. So I was researching a lot, trying to figure things out, trying to find play dates for the 10-year-old. I couldn't figure anything out. Intuitively, I felt this sense of there's something. For a while, my mapping linear mind was a little bit too quick, too hasty to try to I was texting people, trying to Google ideas, and nothing was happening. And I internally felt like I was being too quick and too hasty. I knew intuitively nothing that I was trying to establish was actually going to yield or produce any kind of meaningful result. So I caught that, and I just internally shifted and said, okay, I give this over to God. I place the future in the hands of God. I surrender the journey to reveal itself. And just really being open to, I know my intention and my clarity and my purpose for this day, and I'm not going to control it. There's detail, there's data, there's perspective beyond what I understand. And so, long story short, we all went to a park. We're having a lot of fun together. I'm doing calisthenic stuff with him. My little girls are playing in a sandbox. We're all having a good time. And all the kids are engaged in something meaningful. And there's a man there with his 2 daughters, and we're chatting, with his 2 kids, not daughters. And we're chatting, and I get to know him, and he says, yeah, we have 40 or something acres on our land. We live on top of the mountain. We got fruit trees. If you guys ever want to come and pick fruit, you're invited. And I was just thinking, this is such a beautiful example. I allowed the activity to emerge and kind of lead the way. And there was this really palpable sense, and this is the point, of being in the right place at the right time. Like when you're in touch with your intuition, maybe you don't know where it's going to go, but you'll know this is exactly where I need to be. When you begin making plans that don't feel in harmony with the Tao, it's going to feel out of alignment. Until you kind of catch that and get honest with that, you're going to feel like you're on the wrong journey. The journey kind of starts and begins again the moment we're honest, once again, with the energy that we're with right now. Like we stop pushing ourselves through. It's like driving and like, I have to go this way, I have to go this way. All of the signs and the sun and what direction it's moving is telling us we're going in the wrong direction. And that might take some time before we realize maybe I'm lost. Maybe I'm pushing myself to go where I think I'm supposed to go, but I'm just completely misguided. The moment we allow ourselves to be honest about that, we're not trying to force things according to our logical ideas, we'll allow ourselves to reorient and recalibrate and get back on track. So that was a great learning experience for me. Second house. Second house corresponds to the ground of our self-value, our survival, and how we establish a sense of personal meaning and value in our life. I always use the metaphor of it's the garden that we're tending, the field that we're cultivating and plowing here. On a very practical level, it's our resources. We could even say it's our sustenance. It's how we're surviving, maybe even money, but not necessarily just that. Jupiter in general, moving through this, says you have more resources to your possession than you realize. You are more resourceful. You have more wealth. You possess more capacities and abilities than you realize, and there are more opportunities for growth. Get out of any kind of intellectual stagnation that's kind of keeping you in a rut of just thinking the ways that you usually think. Like this is actually asking for an expansion of thought, because the issue with the second house is just, I know what I know. This is the garden that I tend, and this is where it grows. This is how it grows. So Mars here is bringing this influx and this expansion and this excitement of new experience, new energy. Here's another point that I need to add that I should also cut and paste and put into the introduction. Jupiter will often take away in order to make evident what's really there and kind of help us see the path more clearly. It can do that by exaggerating existing conditions or literally losing something that might be hard, but actually helps us see our path more clearly. So Mars joining Jupiter can actually be pretty destructive. It can even feel violent or destructive or chaotic in the sense that something's being lost. Let's really remember that. It's not just this overt expansion. It can really highlight a lot of things crumbling or being lost or being taken away, or that which is not working being really, really emphasized. With Mars, this can actually feel very unsettling, and we might feel to react to it, right? To become more worked up or more frenetic. It's like trying to plan and organize things and kind of control it all and map it out, figure it out mentally, because maybe it's all kind of falling apart. Relative to Saturn and Pisces, there can be a sort of anarchistic quality. It's not really anarchy. It's really life restructuring itself according to a higher purpose and meaning, and it may not fit into our logical framework as of yet. So there's something to appreciate about just allowing things to kind of shake up and break down and resettle as they need to be, and not to get too reactive, to kind of stay more in the place of, where is this leading us? Like, where's the journey taking? I'm on this journey. It's going to be okay. Don't be so quick to conclude something about it or try to control it. Okay, so relative to the second house, this could feel like existing and known opportunities of living or survival or abundance aren't available. Or like, let's say in the metaphor of the garden, a whole bunch of vermin come and eat all of your crops. What's the point of that? Maybe it's to expand your framework or your perspective of how you're living. Maybe you're being too limited. Maybe the framework from which you're living is keeping you at bay. In that sense of facing where our life and how we're living has been grossly limited, it calls for a sort of intellectual self-reliance and self-trust. I have the ability to navigate and trust myself, trust life and the opportunities opening up for me right now, to invest my attention and energy in something much more meaningful. Now, if we find ourselves in a situation where we're struggling with basic means, having what we need, this really calls us to value ourselves more. Think in ways that enhances your self-value. Don't think in ways that resonates more with stress and deficiency. Again, like, this can highlight where that might exist. Focus on seeing the opportunities and the potential available for you. It just simply might mean getting out of the box of familiarity and opening more to actually what's happening. Third house. Naturally, the third house is going to be emphasizing the Gemini component. Here we're looking fundamentally at our intellectual organizing of reality. Let's imagine this scenario. Your friends are asking you for directions to get from downtown to your house. You're going to give them directions according to the street names and the landmarks that you're familiar with. A storm comes along and, rearranges all of the streets, and all the landmarks have been ruined. You may not be able to map these directions according to the pathways of familiarity. That can feel stressful, but really the opportunity there is you get to look upon your reality and see things you've never seen before. Third house corresponds to communication, but also local travel, in the sense that anything local corresponds to our immediate environment and our ability to communicate, to relate, to engage, to participate socially in our reality. And even if we're traveling long distance, that third house dimension is our ability to participate in that local environment. So our participation and the avenues, the social networking, the opportunities, the things that are actually out there, that the maps that we have in our mind are actually more expansive than we think. I got Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and a bunch of other apps. Like, that might be the world that we know, the mediums of communication. What if you take a walk? What if you're guided and sort of intuitively inspired to talk to that person that's selling ice cream in the corner? What if you just have some conversation with the neighbors? There might be this expansion and sort of enthusiastic energy to socialize more, to engage, to experience connections and events, conversations you haven't had before. Again, with this signature, definitely pay attention to any kind of overdoing it. Like, with the mutable houses in general, the FOMO can be kind of intense. So maybe too many activities, trying too hard to get everything going, talking to everyone. I've been exploring changing my email platform so that I can, really work on making my newsletter also a blog to enhance SEO, draw more people to my writing, to my website. And I learned a really cool lesson. I was sort of jumping from platform to platform, like looking to replace what I have with something new. But I realized there's actually a lot of wisdom in feeling that buildup of energy and not just sort of dispersing myself on like the shiny new social media platform or, newsletter outlet, but working within the existing frameworks that I have, right? Work with a news server, email server that I actually use, study it, enhance it, expand its potential to the fullest extent. And what that's doing, it's building my vibration and getting me really clear about the functionalities that I want to develop, what I'm interested in. And then that allows me to see the opportunities that are out there and to act on them, as opposed to, I want something bigger that will reach more people, that also will blog, right? And just kind of going to whatever looks good. We want to really occupy the space we're in fully, as opposed to dropping it the moment we see something better. With Jupiter Mars here, I think there's a fine line between embracing the intuitive guidance to engage and explore new experiences versus a sort of fleetiness that can be very immature and reactive to the next cool thing. So in essence, this will bring a lot of expansion and a plethora of opportunities and engagements and new ideas. And relative to that square to Saturn, and archetypally, this can be different again, depending on how the houses are in your chart. For many souls, this could be manifesting in the 12th. For some, it might be in the 1st. Depends. But more or less, with Saturn in Pisces, this is going to say there can be no ground. Like, anything can be anything. There can be no direction necessarily to where you're directing your attention. So it's really important that there's a fundamental ground in what am I actually caring about? What's essential for my life? connect with that. So there's some sense of, I'm aware that this journey has a purpose, and I'm not going to indiscriminately, impulsively act on anything and everything that arises for me. In this sense, we can find ourselves really drawn towards, this is the teacher, teaching, study, school that I want to go to. Like when that moment comes, Mars, Jupiter, act on it, and don't be afraid to go all the way. You don't know where it's going to take you, but don't be afraid to go there. That's the key. Fourth house. Fourth house is a state of our emotional security. It's where we're establishing a ground of safety in our life to receive and provide the essential care for ourselves and for the sense of family for those around us. What's essential to know about the fourth house is there's a sort of intuitive emotional wisdom that we develop in knowing what to take in, what not to take in. How do we nurture and protect the human part of this soul experience so that we're able to integrate and emotionally assimilate everything that's happening in our lives? We need to be nourished. We need to rest. We need to have positive, healthy human emotional bonding. So on the one hand, this Mars-Jupiter says home, nurturance, care, whatever home and safety and emotional integration means for you, the bonds, the people, the food, the connections, and even literally where you're living perhaps, this wants to get a lot better. There can be a sense of relevance. This is the home that I want to live in. Home not from a purely sheltering kind of place, but home from a place of, this is the home that can hold me in all that I am. Being Gemini, there can be this sense of, there are features and qualities and dimensions to this home experience that are actually quite diverse. Maybe your home is like, and I think I've mentioned this before, like a youth hostel. Many different kinds of experiences or social activity will come and go, but it's all a reflection of what you essentially need to feel rested and safe and really nurtured on this soul journey. The key is we want to open our mind. The stress with Gemini in the fourth house can, on the one hand, be a sort of mental, frenetic energy that distances us from our emotional body. Like thinking when you're feeling nervous. Getting all worried, like, oh, where am I going to get the next meal? Where am I going to live? Where should I go? What am I going to do? Am I going to have what I need? Is it going to be okay? Are my children going to be okay? A sort of mental frenetic activity that is very, very ungrounding. In that sense, don't become addicted to Zillow or to looking for places to live, metaphorically or figuratively or literally. Home needs to be a place where we're exploring new ideas, open to where our life can be enhanced. And where in that enhancement, there's more love, there's more care, there's more rest. We're going to receive more of what we need for ourselves, for our family, for those with whom we are creating the home experience with. If we're constantly looking for the data or for the information, or just sort of acting upon the next best opportunity or the next best thought, we're going to feel very deeply ungrounded. Again, with this square, with Saturn and Pisces, for many souls, this can be in the first house, could be in the second house. This does sort of speak to a sort of instinctual energy. It could be a primal sense of, I need to make sure my tribe is okay. I need to make sure we have everything that we need and that we're not missing out on essential opportunities for growth and expansion. So it's important that we're not hasty. We take our time, get to know what it is that life is actually wanting to expand and what it wants to give us. And we do that not by seeking something outside of where we are. We do that by thinking about the current reality that we're living in more expansive ways. Like, start where you are. What are the ingredients in your kitchen right now? What are ways that we can implement new recipes, new ways of living, new ways of thinking, new insight, new perspective, things that will radically enhance how you're living? And it's not just about home in a literal sense. Who are you? What's the foundation of how you're living? What is the purpose and the meaning of this life? And what are you nourishing yourself with? What knowledge, what wisdom, what insight do you want to take into your core in order to assimilate and bring more value and meaning into this life? This can easily lead to an expanded framework of life because we're not seeking and looking for everything. Then something will kind of come to us, and then we have to act on that. That's the teaching with this Mars-Jupiter. Again, discerning between hasty and impulsive action and opportunism that's like just reactive versus really being able to guide ourselves intuitively according to the flow of the Tao and to know when to act. And it really highlights the sense of, I am well, I am cared for, I am safe, I am nourished, and life is fundamentally out for my best. With that Mars-Jupiter, if there's a lot of chaos, right? Like, let's say something's disrupting our sense of security or ground. The purpose is to open up greater opportunity, something that's beyond the existing limited framework of our thinking. It's helpful to remember that Gemini in the fourth house might be limiting its scope of what's possible because the fourth house wants to hold on to what's known and secure. Right? This is safe. This is secure. This is what family and home and security feels like and smells like. And so we want to make sure that our existing sense of family, security, home, how we're nourishing ourselves, isn't limited by the attachment to what we're knowing, the dependency upon the familiarity of the world that we know, and we're open to something that is much more relevant and meaningful to our life. Fifth house. Fifth house Gemini is like the gesture, right? Not a gesture, but the jester, J-E-S-T-R. There is an amazing creative versatility in the mind here. You have the ability to perform, to express yourself in very creative and unique ways. And there's usually a lot of genius and mental resourcefulness that is available for souls with this particular signature. Mars-Jupiter coming together is saying, trust your own creative potential. If you're a creative writer, if you're a performer, if you're a comedian, if you're an artist, what are the works? What are the expressions? What are the expressions of self-genius that want to emerge, that you want to give birth to right now? The intuitive flow here, the guidance is listen to the opportunities. Trust them, but don't go seeking to be seen, right? Because the issue here can be putting on a show constantly. Putting on some kind of mask to make yourself look impressive, gain people's adoration, look the way you want others to see you so you can get that promotion, so you can be recognized. And there's a difference between like acting hastily on the opportunity to be something or to pretend to be something in order to be seen versus staying grounded in your authentic self, in your authentic creative genius, and following how life is wanting to lead you more and more towards more authenticity and to share that. Right? There might be opportunities here where you get to express yourself or actualize yourself in ways because suddenly new pathways become available for you. Hold a sort of optimistic attitude and be courageous, and don't be afraid to be bold in really putting yourself out there and to be seen in your unique way, as opposed to just trying to be seen or recognized. You know, we can think about, for an example, trying to make yourself all attractive on social media and do the things that, other people, researching Gemini, how are other people gaining more followers? But then you might lose that authenticity. The key is to become known and to creatively actualize yourself. And it's not just about being known. It's about giving birth to the genius inside of you and feeling like, this is what I'm here to do. I just want to spend all of my energy in this art, in this creativity. This is what I'm here for. And it may not even matter if people recognize it, but being able to really embellish that part of yourself is most important. So the key is, do you love what you're putting out there? Are you having fun? If you are, do it as much as possible, right? Say no to the things that are actually calling for inauthenticity. Say yes if you're able to embrace opportunities in your authentic way. I mean, Gemini does call for sort of mutability and adaptability, right? So there is a need to say, yeah, I can do this, I can try that. But if it means being dishonest about ourselves, it's not going to actually make us feel good. Because the growth and the success that we want to see with this signature is, I'm expressing and sharing and promoting that which is really creatively indigenous to my own soul. For many souls, depending on how the houses are sized in your chart, we'll have Saturn and Pisces in the second, right? So this emphasizes like a self-love, self-trust, believing in yourself. But that long term, like, what are you trying to build? What are you trying to establish and actually do with your life? Many of you will actually want to start earning income or to expand your income relative to your art. I mean, for many of us, that's like a dream, to do what we love, to do our art, and to be able to do that full time. So however this is expressing for you, there's a great opportunity for you to just give it a go. go for it. Don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to speak your truth. And again, fifth house can have a sort of shyness to it. And that's okay. Not everyone's going to like or agree with what you put out there. That's natural because we're all going to resonate with different people. It's important that you resonate with what you're putting out there. And I think a lot of expansion and growth can happen in that way. Another note to say, relative to the sort of like the destructive quality of Mars, really enhancing what's out of alignment or kind of blowing things up because we need to move the energy. To the extent to which we're out of touch with our own creative genius, there might be a sense of, let's say you work for an advertisement agency and you lose your job. That can feel very unsettling, but then that might actually free up your time to become your own entrepreneur. Things like that, really look towards in an optimistic way. How is life freeing me up right now to see that I get to focus more on actualizing my gifts in this world? Sixth house. This can really highlight a whole lot of scatteredness, right? Gemini in the sixth house, you can have many, many projects going on at the same time. Overload yourself with too many things. The key with Jupiter, Mars in Gemini, first and foremost, is slow down. There is fundamentally the opportunity to enhance how we're living, our health, our insight, our knowledge. If we're an apprentice, this is about studying. It's perhaps finding or coming into alignment with a path that we can really train in and develop. Like you find your Ayurvedic teacher or your astrology teacher or your, spiritual healing practice. But don't just rush and run into anything and everything. It's like Googling, how do I heal a paper cut? I had this dream, and what does it mean? My child has this issue, and I woke up with a stomach ache. Everything can sort of have a sort of symptomatic reality that we're trying to fix. And that can be endless. And that's not just letting ourselves follow the ungrounded impulses of the mind, but to allow ourselves to come into a more comprehensive, unified cosmological understanding of our lives, how we can be cultivating it, developing and practicing ourselves to create more healing and holistic congruency in our lives. This means having more wisdom and insight. Suddenly, all of the routines and chores and the different tasks and things that we're cultivating in life start to make sense when we start to unify our attention towards the things that really matter, right? If there's a lot of crisis and chaos and everything's falling apart, it might be because we're procrastinating, giving attention to what's really important, right? This procrastination can be the work that we're really here to do, right? Your training, your personal work practice, your spiritual practice, your studies. What we're neglecting, what we're not tending to, will reflect itself in all of our life falling apart. Because there's going to be an essential pattern of, I don't want to do this one thing, so I'm going to do everything else but that. But if we don't do that one important thing, all of the other things actually become somewhat dysfunctional. The procrastination can express as a perpetual busyness, but not actually being truly productive in the ways that we truly need to, and not actually improving our life. So in terms of being able to say no, if you have, in this case, Saturn and Pisces might be in your third house, from that perspective, we need to be able to say no to all of the options and possibilities and paths that we can be walking and focus truly on what is of essence. And again, it's really more important that we're completing the tasks that we're doing and not leaving a whole lot of tabs opened on our metaphorical computer, not having a whole lot of unresolved to-dos. Complete everything that you do, because everything that you do is everything that you do. How we do one thing is how we do everything. The attention to detail that we offer and sort of the spiritual apprenticeship that we cultivate in everything that we do is a signal and a symbol for how we're approaching everything else in our life. So if we're scattered and leaving our tools all over the place and not completing what we begin, that's going to say something about our relationship to our life in general. Otherwise, there might be a need to just radically simplify. We may not need to be giving as much attention to all of the things that we're giving attention to. It might be, again, a subtle form of procrastinating and avoiding what's truly important for us along the soul path. Jupiter, Mars joining in Gemini in the 7th house. So of all signatures, Gemini in the 7th is incredibly social. Right? A lot of journalists, a lot of counselors, people that are just interacting and engaging with a lot of people. Naturally, the expansion here is there are people to talk to, communication to share, an exchange of value and resources and knowledge between one another that enhances each other's lives. If you're dating, there's a whole lot of people, a lot of new experiences, new encounters, and it's very expansive. You're learning a lot. You might find new teachers, new avenues of experience through relationship, through interaction, all the ways that we experience relationship that shares and enhances value and understanding and insight and growth in each other's lives. But this can go too far. I'm going to talk to and share any level of intimacy and engagement with anyone at any level all the time and answer any question and provide for needs that are being asked of me. This can be excessive, too much, which then leads to a deep sense of intellectual, social, mental stimulus overwhelm and the need to retreat. Like that Jupiter can always speak to overload. With Mars, just too much energy all at once. If we think of the signature from the point of view of Mars sort of bringing this like quick movement of energy where things are actually destabilized to help kind of illuminate where things actually are and bring more insight and perspective, there might be a change in our relationships. This fundamentally speaks to speak the truth. Maybe someone else is expressing a truth, a need, a perspective that's uncomfortable for us. Can we open our mind even if we don't understand? Sometimes we don't understand other people's realities or experiences because of our own projections of our own needs and who we want them to be. Likewise, we may not speak our own truth because we don't want to be rejected, so we'll sort of live a kind of duplicity of just adopting to who we need to be or what we need to say. So speak your truth. Be a leader and clear-minded in listening to other people's truths. This is going to enhance and expand deeply relevant and meaningful intimacy in our lives. That's the point. Where the conversations and relationships that we have are about further revealing more of the truth and the direction of our lives. That might mean things are changing. That might mean our intellectually organized idea or expectations of things is not quite what it needed to be. And if it feels like that's being shaken up, don't worry, just let go of what you thought needed to be. And 7th house, listen. Listening becomes the vehicle, and listening also becomes the vehicle to, do I really want to be here? Do I really want to do this? Is this right for me? Like that Libra 7th house dynamic is an inner and outer listening, really hearing another person's reality. What do they want? What do they need? And discerning from within, what am I available to provide and offer relative to what do I need? So that's a very important distinction. For many souls, we're going to have Saturn in Pisces manifesting in the 4th, maybe the 5th house. So that's going to also bring forward, kind of tending to the inner child. Am I caring and fundamentally grounding and nurturing myself in a positive and healthy way? Or am I overdoing it? We want to make sure that our relationships are not overly ungrounded and sort of chaotic in the sense that anything can go and just sort of random and opportunistic, but we're growing. We're becoming more true to ourselves and experiencing more meaningful, helpful relationships in all regards in our life. If you're a counselor, by the way, this can really reflect this sort of growing insight and awareness of whatever kind of counseling work you do. It's really being able to understand people better. Perhaps you become more honest or more decisive or focused in asking questions or speaking the truth, things like that. 8th house. So Gemini in the 8th house is seeking psychological knowledge. It's wanting to probe deeply into understanding and grasping why is everything the way it is, and internally, why am I the way I am? Why do I want what I want? Why do I like what I like? What's the psychological basis for what's really going on? So it's being able to probe to the bottom line of our own thinking and to kind of extract some kind of essential insight and understanding. There's a great ability with Gemini in the 8th to listen and hear things on a very deep level. Like, what's the psychological bottom line? Like, what's really going on there? The ability to question our thoughts, to question what we hear. So Mars-Jupiter is basically an expansion of our psychological self-knowledge. On the one hand, we might be called to, through a deep, penetrating sort of curiosity, to be engaging in studies, in relationships, in experiences, engaging with teachers, having new experiences that are going to bring us to our psychological, spiritual, emotional edges, but we want to go there. literally, be it a personal, intimate experience with another person, or I'm going to study something and kind of delve deeply into my own soul or investigate myself in through some kind of avenue. The essence of it in all cases is I'm wanting to get underneath my existing psychological limitations. I want to be reborn to myself and grow and evolve. So there's this deep draw here. So on the one hand, this is going to speak to the possibility of expanding our insight of reality through deeper psychological self-knowledge. And if there are challenges, if things are blowing apart or we're psychologically confronted, this Mars-Jupiter says, do not get victimized and do not lose yourself. Like, do not step outside of your own inner space by overly concerning yourself with what other people are doing or thinking, right? Like, we can kind of leave our soul by investigating other people and trying to get into their psychology and miss that this is actually about understanding ourselves. Why is this happening? What's the evolutionary signature behind all gain and loss, all movement, all experiences in my own life? We're deepening our own psychological self-knowledge. So if there are opportunities, new experiences, new relationships, new things to study, follow it, tune into it, embrace it, act upon it if it's time to do so. In the same way, there can be this sense of, I'm looking at something very deeply in my life. There's some knowledge I'm drawn to study and investigate and research so I can see what's really going on more clearly. And that might say, if the time has come to let go of something, a dependency, an addiction, an entrapment, something that's keeping your soul sovereign energy stuck up, embrace that, do that. So we're essentially eliminating any kind of victimization from our consciousness, and this can really highlight where we can become much more empowered. And there can be that experience of loss, right? Things are happening that are inducing a sense of betrayal or abandonment, or just a sense of not being connected to our own inner strength. And that Mars-Jupiter wants to be growing in our own self-leadership to become psychologically self-empowered. So we can really see our circumstances and the opportunities that are actually open and available for us from a new level of inner strength. And the thing to really be aware of is, curiosity can kill the cat. Being overly drawn by desire. It's like, ooh, I'm interested in this. Or like, ooh, that person symbolizes something to me that I want to understand. Everything can be a point of intrigue to the point where it just kind of destroys us. So not every intrigue is a point of action. That can become very ungrounded. Depending on our unique soul context, that can really take us all over the place into some pretty dark places. So the exercising of know is to understand I'm really here to know who I am and strengthen my own soul vibration and what I'm here for, what the purpose of my life is. And it's not about adding more experience just to fulfill this underlying craving for something deeper, but it's actually arriving back at my soul. And with that fundamental discernment, it allows us to engage all these experiences and opportunities and not just sort of be drawn by desire itself. There's always that trick with that 8th house. Like, you have to embrace your desires, but you don't always act on them. You don't act on every craving or aversion, but you need to meet them. And I think this Mars-Jupiter, some sort of intelligence and wisdom and insight and intuition around what to do with them. Sometimes it's just they're there. And become more self-aware and see where life is leading us. There might be actions that will really help us to move this energy, fulfill our desires, kind of transmute it in healthy ways that opens up and expands our life path. But we may not want to just act in it right away when the first opportunity presents itself. Jupiter, Mars, and Gemini in the 9th house. The 9th house speaking to this pilgrimage. Life is this journey of ongoing growth and expansion. The nature of Gemini in the 9th says there is a diversity of experiences and perspectives that will enhance from all different angles your comprehension and understanding of the truth. It's not just like one singular path. It's actually a path that encompasses a wide scope of experience. It's like the metaphor of multicultural travel and being able to understand how truth expresses in many different languages and many different perspectives. Even through empirical knowledge and empirical scientific studies, that becomes a way of understanding more of this reality. If you're a teacher, the beauty of this signature is also the ability to communicate and convey spiritual concepts or ideas without any kind of religious dogmatic framework, right? It's about being able to speak and understand and translate higher knowledge in the modern language, in the ways that we can understand according to our local vernacular, things like that. So Mars Jupiter is like, there are places to go, like figuratively or literally. There are new journeys and adventures, perhaps in experiences and lands and with people and paths that you've never considered, right? And I love this signature because it's so exciting and diverse and engaging. Get in a car, get in a plane, go on foot, find yourselves arriving in a threshold of experience, be it spiritual experience, business, entrepreneurial, how to make money, just knowledge and insight into reality that you've never encountered before. And it might seem mundane. It may not fit into your existing scope of what your spiritual path is, because that's what Gemini is doing here. And Mars and Jupiter in particular says, don't have too many limited beliefs and ideas and constructs around how it has to look and how it has to go. Trust in the journey and trust in the path and how it's taking you. There's like a little story I have. I was walking through the forest to record a video recently, and I had this intuition to go this way, where I would end up sitting amongst the trees, and I'm with my dog. But I had the desire to actually go to where the water was. Like, I wanted the path to be towards the water. That's where I wanted to record my video. I get there, and it's too much. Too many people. They all want to play with Vesta. Vesta's exciting a lot. She's barking. So I realized this wasn't the place for me. And as I'm walking back to the spot that I wanted to be, I was thinking, this is a great example of Mars, Jupiter coming together in Gemini. Right? I had this intuitive impulse to go in a certain direction. Right? Just thinking about this relative to the ninth house. I had this impulse to go in a certain direction. But logically, I said, no. It makes sense to go this way. This is where the path is. But then I realized that path actually wasn't really useful for me. So the path was leading me towards an experience that didn't make sense to me in the moment, but it's exactly what I needed. Just think of that example in terms of when we allow ourselves to be guided along that journey. Same with that story I gave earlier with me and the kids and planning for the day and how I ended up meeting all these people. And opening up, a place with 50 acres to visit to pick fruit trees. If we're letting go of how we are kind of limiting ourselves with our beliefs about where we're supposed to go and how it's supposed to look, there are all kinds of pathways and directions. We can feel otherwise very lost and overwhelmed and kind of out of place. Like, this can highlight a sense of, I'm not supposed to be here, right? There's something else for me to do, somewhere else for me to go. And that only happens not because it's objectively true. It only happens in the moment when we're not in touch with our intuition, but we're playing out certain beliefs. So 2 things to be on the lookout for this, right? Don't be alienating yourself with a whole bunch of beliefs and ideas of what you're supposed to do and how it's supposed to look, because you are where you are right now, and the listening and the guidance for the path is right now. So if you find yourself in a place where it's not flowing and it feels kind of confusing and you're not learning and it's not relevant, slow down, reconnect to where's the Tao leading you. Sometimes you need to say, it's time for me to go. You got to pick up and go because you got yourself there only because you were trying to fill out a belief system. Okay? But the other thing to look out for is it's not about getting up and leaving. It's just looking at your existing belief systems. Like, you are always where you're meant to be right now. And whether the guidance is right now to leave or to stay, it happens the moment you touch base with an authentic, I'm here. Right? You come back to your intuition and your guidance in this moment, and that will lead the way. So if we're in the perpetual restlessness of always wanting to go, always looking for another place to be, we're never going to allow ourselves to learn from where we are right now and actually receive that guidance. That's a very important dimension. In terms of our own studies, on our spiritual path, if we're a student, which we all are, this can really enhance our insight and our knowledge of reality. If we're manifesting in a teacher role in any way, this will further enhance new pathways, new avenues of communicating and teaching, and making yourself more available. Lastly, one thing that I love about the signature, just from the perspective of there being many angles through which we can understand the truth, we remember that Jupiter in Gemini in the 9th says, There's no one path that encompasses a full picture of reality. They're all going to understand and highlight and communicate and explain some part of reality from a particular angle, but they're not going to be cosmologically holistic in its entirety, right? It might be useful for what it is, and every path kind of leads us in a certain direction, but it's not going to lead us in all directions all the time. So even an atheistic cosmology is not inherently more better or more useful or more spiritually conducive than a bhakti yoga, devotional cosmology. So being open to different frameworks and perspectives can be very helpful here. Again, for some, this might manifest with Saturn and Pisces in the 6th house. So that also says, like, let go of a sort of spiritual puritanism or a control around how things have to be. Be open to where the path actually is, where you might be cultivating yourself and growing right now, perhaps in a completely new way. Mars, Jupiter, and Gemini in the 10th house. So the gift here is a sort of social acuity and skillfulness. Gemini in the 10th can have this ability to put on many hats and to know how to participate in social reality and fulfill responsibilities and obligations and the roles that one is playing in a very diverse kind of way. So there's a mental agility and ability to adapt to social existence and one's duties and responsibilities in life. From a business or work point of view, this says there's absolutely growth and expansion. What are ways that you can enhance your business? Perhaps here's a business class that you're going to take that's going to radically expand your mind and your framework and your understanding of potential. Here are opportunities or collaborations or new avenues or new ways of using social media or your business or promotion that will be very enhancing for you. But if we're just opportunistic, we can have a sort of inauthenticity here. We can kind of sell our soul to the seeming lure of success and disregard our own inner ethic. There can be an attractiveness to a lot of success and growth that is very ungrounding, that takes us away from an authentic sense of I'm navigating from my own inner authority, not just doing whatever I can do to succeed, right? Like you can do all kinds of promotion and put things out there and say things that maybe aren't even honest. Oh, but it's going to get clients, right? How the marketing industry knows how to get people. And there's a path for that. There's a way for that, right? But we are the ones within ourselves that have to determine, am I being honest? Am I communicating something that's not true? Am I actually selling the thing that I'm actually, presenting? Is it honest? Am I writing words that are actually true? We can be plagiarizing or copying things that other people said, right? Wherever we're focused on that flash in the pan success and promotion is where we might find ourselves being unethical and dishonest. So Mars Jupiter here is asking for honesty, integrity, and self-leadership and seeing where the opportunities for growth and expansion in our work. And there's a lot of potential here if we're willing to be responsible and to trust that I am mature and capable and wise enough to know how to navigate this big world of being an adult. I can do this, and I can learn the new skills that are presenting themselves to me and grow and enhance in my capacity. Like, you become a better adult. You become more versatile, more skilled, more capable, more successful. On the other hand, if you find yourself losing a job or opportunities or flows or avenues aren't working, right? Or the thing you've built, your framework, is kind of crumbling and it's dysfunctional, that can be that Mars Jupiter of a lot of energy sort of highlighting what needs to change or what needs to go. So you can focus on what's really of essence, what's a lot more relevant and valuable for you. Let's say you're building a business and you have your website and then the whole thing collapses, right? What might be on the other end of that is not so much that the business was wrong or that your intuitive sense of direction was wrong. It's just that you were limiting yourself. It reminds me of the story. I once bought my first smartphone. And I think like the day after I bought it, someone broke into my car and stole it. And I was really bummed out about it. But then I realized after doing a little more research that I actually didn't want that smartphone. I wanted a different one from a completely different brand that would be more compatible, that would have the apps that worked with my business. Like, functionally, the things that I actually needed existed within that particular brand of smartphone. I just think of that in terms of how loss might feel like a professional detriment. Like, it's an investment, you lost it, the framework's gone, or you're fired. But often that's just opening the door to what will bring a lot more growth and expansion for you if you can be intuitive and clear-minded in seeing that. Okay, let's look at the 11th house, Mars, Jupiter, and Gemini in the 11th. I'll start with, we have all these people on this planet, and we can hang out together and start talking to each other. And in theory, we can just talk about anything and have any kind of conversation and share all kinds of knowledge and information. This signature wants to liberate the mind from all of that. You don't have to think the way everyone else thinks. You don't have to map and logically order your reality in the boxes that everyone else does. There are many new ways of thinking about this world beyond the boxes and the frameworks that everyone else is familiar with. Free up your mind. So on the one hand, there can be a stagnation or a sense of stress if we're overly socially engaged or engaging in thoughts and ideas that aren't relevant for us. This wants to expand and free up our mind, free up our life with new thoughts, new ideas, new frameworks of thinking that just says, hey, have you thought about looking here instead of here? Or instead of here, what if you just take a step back and look at all of it? Whoa, that's cool. What if you don't have to define your social identity in any particular way, but you become more of an observer? So the thing that we might need to let go of might be where we're seeking belonging or participation, or, let's say you're a part of a community or a political party or a spiritual group or whatever. There's always going to be that limit, that threshold of the thoughts that everyone is thinking that become their own closed loop. Mars Jupiter wants to see something new, and that might be expanding beyond that circle, beyond that framework. On the other hand, you might find yourself feeling deeply alienated or like an outsider, like you don't belong. Oftentimes, that serves the purpose to highlight where you are to get more in touch with your essential individuality, to connect with your own soul vibration and follow your own path. Don't look to be involved, to be included all the time. Don't be afraid to be an outsider in a temporary sense, because it's not really true that you're ever an outsider. It's more true that you're just not conforming your mind to fit into the boxes that maybe other people are in. Stay free to your own thinking and watch what organically comes together when you're not trying to force it. This can bring interactions, human relationships and experiences and exposure to knowledge and communities and ways of thinking that feel very relevant and essential. It's like all of a sudden you find a whole bunch of people that are thinking the same thing that you didn't even know about. And a whole new world opens up for you. On the other hand, with that Mars energy, the hastiness, eliminate and don't be so concerned with trying to belong, right? I'm going to say the thing that's going to make me cool and be in and join the clique. Imagine a group of kids at school and you want to be a part of it. So there's just sort of I'll jump into any kind of social experience so I can be a part and included. But you might forego your own authenticity in doing so. So this really calls you to stay authentic and free to yourself and not just seek belonging for its own sake. Lastly, Jupiter, Mars, and Gemini in the 12th house. This is a really cool signature because it really speaks to how the mind can always learn more about reality. There's infinite learning that can happen to learn more about this wholeness, this oneness within which we exist. But the mind itself will never, ever reach a full and comprehensive logical understanding of reality because logic will never reach God. So there's always going to be a humbling dimension with Gemini in the 12th of surrendering the mind to the mystery, right? And in that sense, the mind can become an instrument. We can find ourselves opening up to amazing knowledge and insight where we begin to understand how things work on a logical basis. So this signature can speak to an enhancement in our spiritual, intuitive knowledge of reality through the empirical, logical mind. This can be the ability to explain otherwise very complex spiritual or metaphysical concepts that we can logically piece together and put out there and explain and articulate in ways that all kinds of people can understand. Things that otherwise seemed like a mystery can suddenly feel very, very clear and lucid. But this happens in particular when the mind is given over to higher meaning, right? When it's just about trying to understand for its own sake, there can be this endless grasping of knowledge and understanding that never really comes. Because if we're trying to learn anything, the limitation that we face here is, well, there's always more to learn about something and I have no ground. So there can be a naivety. You believe everything someone tells you, or you get new information and you start researching and learning and you're distracted in all kinds of directions. There can be no ground, or even socially. Any conversation can, by association, go from one point to another point to another point endlessly and go all over the place. So we don't want to just be endlessly seeking or in this ungrounded pattern of just letting the mind go wherever it goes. The mind in its highest understanding is an instrument, is an agent of something greater than our own making. So it's really about allowing ourselves to be inspired and to be in the sense of, this life is a spiritual journey and I'm learning these beautiful things and I'm on this spiritual quest. So figuratively or literally, this signature is like going away on a spiritual retreat where you're immersing yourself in spiritual knowledge and study and deeper spiritual meditation. And however that's looking for you, the key of it, it's inspiration, it's illumination and wisdom and knowledge of this reality. And so if you're a writer, if you're disseminating knowledge, this might be there's something for you to share and communicate, to actually disseminate, bring this energy out there so it can reach the masses. 12th house flows like water and can reach wherever the container and the space has been created for it to go. Likewise, we might find ourselves inspired by different spiritual ideas or inspiring ideas that will really enhance and bring more meaning into our lives. But again, there needs to be a sort of spiritual discernment, because we can be open to, in theory, anything and be deluded, be very confused. Again, if you think about this in connection with the Saturn in Pisces, in this case, we could have Saturn in Pisces in the 9th house. Right? This can be like, I'll go anywhere, do anything, and believe anything, but not necessarily a very strong ground in spiritual discrimination. And also discernment in terms of what I'm taking in. So logic is important here. We don't just believe things on blind faith. Like the beauty of Gemini in the 12th is there is the ability to explain the mechanics, how this stuff actually works, logically, empirically. So if we're just deluded into believing or naively following some kind of logical framework that doesn't make sense to us, we need to have enough clarity and strength of mind to ask questions. If we do, we can kind of be sharp and clear and decisive, maybe see through the illusion. Perhaps there's something that we were believing and suddenly that sandcastle just kind of falls apart. Maybe that's a part of sort of things blowing up and getting very exaggerated. But the purpose of that sandcastle just dissolving is to help us see more of the truth and not the thing we're focused on that was actually obscuring our clear vision. And this completes my look at this Mars, Jupiter, and Gemini through the 12 houses. As always, thank you so much for watching.